The third expansion to this MMO is called Its Best, and has made me grow 3 inches taller and grow some chest hairs. Final Fantasy XIV is a rather sad game that has you observe sad experiences: losing a loved one, an aftermath of failure, losing hope, having to deal with a combat, me not having a job, me summoned to a new world after almost experiencing death by the Empire. You meet this guy who is only able to see your feet, that invites you to stay at the Crystarium, and the guy who stays in your room when you're sleeping, which doesn't go away. To add on to that, reminder that the universe is split into 13 shards and that you are coming to help number 1 by clearing the light and monsters. The Crystarium is gorgeous, and frankly is every place in Shadowbringers. The new world allows for different rules and layouts not pertaining to the last one, which makes it feel so fresh, and helps in keeping me immersed into the story. By the way, you should subscribe. Throughout this, Final Fantasy XIV makes the world feel dreadful, with a few hiccups along the way. As I said before, sometimes quests exploring cities is too long and boring, while some tell stories which help sell the dreadful atmosphere of the world, which I appreciate a lot. Hell, some of the characters by themselves do a good job of that. The Warrior of Darkness follows you around and tries to realize why he is still alive while his friends are dead, and struggles with his lack of mortality. The dynamic between Thancred and Minfilia is great too. Minfilia has to possess someone with her in them to be present, as some girls have part of her powers within them. Minfilia says that she will give up her control, leaving Thancred behind if the girl decides to live on her own. The new Minfilia decides to stay in control and is blessed with the different appearance and the power to sense ether, which could locate light wardens. Also, her name is Rind now. I do appreciate the struggle, showing anger, protectiveness, and love for her, which helped in showing consequence in the story. However, that dynamic disappears, and any sort of interaction between them is not present anymore. Not only is that not present anymore, guess what guys, our favorite trope, either it be sacrifice or beating tough odds, Y'shtola and Thancred, in the Crystal X arc later on in the game, both pretty much have faked deaths. Emmet Selch is introduced as an Ashen who follows you, and with his powers decides to pluck Y'shtola out of the lifestream since there was a spell casted when she was falling and yada yada. He wants calamities to be caused to rejoin the world and their dimensions together as things were normally. Of course, this needs an imbalance of elements like light, meaning you are literally going against what he wants. He just wants to watch, because he's that type of guy. Which I actually have a problem with, his lack of interaction throughout the story until the end. Another villain is the ruler of Elmore, which wants to rule over people in exchange for feeling safe and led. Or so I wish it would have been portrayed that way the first time around. Someone tell Eggman he might want to cool his jets. It sounds like every second he's making an anime speech on how evil he is, basically making a joke out of him, at least until later. Also, his animation. Wow, that is rough. Your first priority is regrouping with your friends, which has you explore different places and learn many things of the world, such as the new world affecting your old world, and the hunt to remove the excess light and find the light wardens, which basically lead the Sin Eaters. Your first light warden is as simple as finding it and realizing you have the power to evaporate it. Others involve long quests, involving doing fetch quests for fairies to open a gate with their previous king, turn the light warden inside, repowering a sacred temple after trying to become an ally to the protective inhabitants because their homes were destroyed, trying to find an item in a cave which an engineer of Talos golems needs to make the trolley work, as his wife died while trying to find it. Each of these has you finding items needed, and of course provides you with context in the story, like when you find a tablet having clues, to puzzles telling you where to find a royal quest, which helps you enter Fano to try and repower a magical sealed barrier, to get into the Kitana Falls, to finally kill the Light Warden, all while trying to fight a radical religious group and the Elmorians teaming up with them to attack you. Things like these are connected a lot, as you do quests with them. However, in my opinion, sometimes there are inclusions that pad too much time and quests that are unnecessary. Honestly, this is present all over the place in smaller amounts. I especially dislike the Fairy Collection quest to reach the second Light Warden, which I mentioned in the last video. I also dislike right after the Fano quest I just mentioned, you hear about an area that can only be accessed through a trolley that's not functioning. You have to research the area and find people, which you then have to fight, which you then have to bring to the city, which then have you repair the roads manually, along with fighting off monsters and then asking around to find materials to fix the golems. Jesus Christ, man. Though this picks up after with more story, the time between this was just really boring for me. I would have preferred it to be cut, especially with the developed threat of the Elmorians coming up. The pacing is exemplified when it's revealed Valtteri was a Light Warden, and you build a golem to reach him. I understand including the process, but adding bullshit like putting trolls in a competition to sleep to win a contest for them is ridiculous. I mean, talk about tone deaf. This game starts having a giddy My Hero Academia tone to it. This guy is murdering people and turning them into beasts. Can we get on with it? After you bitch Vothri in his final form, I would say Final Fantasy XIV does a lot. After absorbing the power of the Light Warden, you realize something is off. This is because whenever you absorbed Ether, you didn't really dispel it, meaning you are at risk of turning into one. Thankfully, this was mentioned beforehand, so I really enjoy this moment. The Exarch, however, tries to harness your power and teleport away to sacrifice himself, but gets shot by Emmett. Emmett, of course, wants the imbalance in elements to happen to merge your worlds, so he doesn't want the light to go away and realizes you are too weak to be his ally. Then he monologues about how he created Vothri to create imbalance. Personally, I would have appreciated less of an evil plan dump. I feel like in many places this could have been developed, but instead, it happens right in the moment. Kind of surreal actually, it's like we're in an anime and time isn't moving. While biding time, you have flashbacks from your Echo in the past, explaining how the Exarch was from the future, after the calamity, and used a device to teleport back to stop it. As you hunt Emmett by going underwater through trenches, you discover a city made by Ashens, or a memory of it, days before the original catastrophe. They combat this by sacrificing half of themselves to a star named Zodiarch, and another half to restore the damage. Emmett now has to rejoin the world to awaken Zodiarch, and sacrifice the remaining life in the world to bring back his people, who sacrificed themselves. I do like the bigger picture plan, and the fight on what's right here, but I still think it could have been done earlier to keep me invested. Later, you come to meet Emmett, who transforms into Hades, having all of your friends chime in, with a final blow by the help of the Warrior of Darkness, finally understanding his purpose and disappearing. Also, the Crystal Exarch didn't die, so that's another fake death, I guess. And now ends with returning home. Final Fantasy XIV does have a good story, but sometimes suffers from the lack of commitment to certain consequences, padding that removes tension, along with its presentation visually and technically. I also think many characters don't get their time to shine and get cut short, and I'll be making a separate video on the combat in this game. Frankly, I thought Final Fantasy XIV was a good game, not a great one.